I am playing Yeba. If y'all don't know about Yeba, then I don't know. I really don't know what you're doing musically, but she just released a new song. Right, my grown and sexy station. She just released a new song. Her name is Yeba. It's Abby spelled backwards. Hey, Kelly. It's Abby spelled backwards, but she just released a new song called Distance, and it is amazing. And I can't stop listening to it. And this has a real, like, jazzy vibe. And I really need something. I usually listen to some turnt music, but I can't stop listening to this today. I don't know why. All right. Ooh. Sorry, I just wanted to put my thing on Do Not Disturb. Is Nasim in here? Oh yeah, there she is. Oh, she sent me a request. I need to tighten up. Okay, I just... Special guest. See if she's in here. Oh!
Yo, 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 yo.
Yo, yo, yo. Funny meeting you here.
I'm glad you put on smooth jazz, Miriam.
I'm literally, this song that I'm listening to, I was going to put on some Roman John Arthur for you.
Okay.
That's what I'm about to play while people get in here, but I've been listening to that song I was just listening to all day. Come on, girls. Look, I said the same thing. I was like, so Nasim, you stepping up in the art of storytelling, you got a story to tell. Start with the story of those curls that are popping.
Oh, it's a journey. It has been a journey. As you know, 3 years ago, I cut all my hair off.
Yes, I'm aware.
So these are fresh curls.
Fresh.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they look great. Like I said that earlier.
Thanks.
So I'm just going to let a couple more people get in here for a little bit. And I also, because you called me out, I decided to put on some Drake. I should put on some ratchet music so you'll feel at home.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I saw some Farsi. It looks like some of my brethren are in here.
I saw that. I saw the Farsi typing, and I was like, I'm gonna wave. I don't know how to respond. Let me make sure I wave. Oh, who was that? Who was writing? Make sure I wave to everybody. Somebody named Domesticated Scholar is in here. I like that.
That's Renee. Hey, Renee. That's my
Hey, Renee.
Classmate from Georgia State, and we collaborate on some projects together.
Okay. The fashionista is in here. A return customer. How was your day today? Another day.
Clint Fluker in here. He downloaded Instagram just for the occasion.
I thought I saw a follow request from Clint Fluker. I was like, I don't know whether to be mad or I think I'm mad.
He don't be on it like that.
I know. But thank you, Clint. Thank you for the follow. James. Hi, James. Oh, come on, Black Love 2020.
Thanks.
Oh. All right. Well, look, I'm ready. I don't know about you.
I'm ready.
All right.
So you freestyle at the end, right?
Yes.
Okay.
You know this. I gotta have something to freestyle. I mean, we freestyle at the end.
No.
Well, look, welcome everybody. This is episode. Let me turn this music off. This is episode. I could not believe it. This is my 6th episode of this show.
Congratulations.
It's pretty crazy to think about, but this is episode 6, and I did the unthinkable. I got Nasim Fluker on this IG live tip. It's like weird.
I'm glad
It's
you
like
had some practice because you're gonna need it for this one.
I'm gonna be in the driver's seat on this one. But like you said, you are an influencer. You are you are many things, but one of my dearest friends. Everybody, if you don't know, this is Nasim Fluker. She is the guest on episode 6 of The Art of Storytelling. And I do want to say, give a little backstory of how we know each other, which I've been doing. So Nasim is married to my god brother, who's in here, Clint Fluker, and who I've known since we were little kids. And I'm trying to think what year it was that we met for the first time. It had to have been like...
We met at my wedding because...
Is that the first time we met? Oh, that's so weird to me.
Because your mom was like, "Can I bring my 2 kids?" And I was like, "Sure."
You were like, "They're not on the list."
They're not on the list, but it's okay. I'm so glad. That was the best thing.
I know. Oh my God. So that's weird. So I'd heard about you all up until then. And then when we finally met and like hung out, I was like, oh, so now this is my friend. This is now my god sister, and Clint is her husband. Get him out of the way. Now I introduced you as like, this is my god sister and her husband, Clint. And they're wonderful. But so that was in 2013.
13.
Okay, 13. Wow. So you guys have been married 7 years. So we've known each other since then, and things really took off since then. So what I want to do tonight is, like I said, we're going to talk about Nasim, just hear a little bit about your story of forging your path here in Atlanta, starting your own business. Shady Radical in the building. Oh. Okay, I got to stay out the comments. But forging a new path, starting your own consulting business here in Atlanta, and really just talk about how you've been able to find a seat at the table in a lot of the movement and the development and in the public policy world in the A. So thank you so much for being here, first of all.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so proud of you. I love all of your.
Yes, by the grace of God.
There's literally no excuses because there's nothing to do.
Good. That's exactly what I'm doing. I'm taking advantage of people's free time. Okay, so Nasim Fluker. Nasim, my booby Fluker.
That's it. Thank you.
Don't get it twisted. Don't forget. So you are an Atlanta native. Your father is Persian. Your mother is, as I like to call, Southwest Atlanta Black. From the SWAT. You attended Westminster, graduated Riverwood High School, graduated American University with your bachelor's degree, Georgia State University with your master's degree. So it's already looking good. It's already looking good. You've lived in Nicaragua, you've lived in Israel, you lived in the U.S. Virgin Islands, and then moved back to Atlanta. What year would you say? What year did you move back here?
It was 2012, 2011, something like that.
2011, 2012. You moved back to Atlanta, got married. And the Atlanta you moved back to looked a little bit different, felt a little bit different than the Atlanta that you left before college. So tell us about when you moved back here, kind of restarting your life after being abroad, being in DC. What did you feel like was missing when you got back, and what did you decide to do about it?
So, I mean, like you said, when I came back as an adult. So what I remember about Atlanta was as a child. So I don't know which parts were there or not there, but my experience when growing up was obviously very multicultural. My family background is mixed. I'm a member of the Baha'i community, so I was really used to an international and sort of eclectic and very thoughtful community. And when I came back, I missed sort of the progressive thought, particularly the progressive Black thought. And it's not that it wasn't here anymore. It just seemed like there weren't places where you could easily access it. I remember hanging out at like ThrdSpace back in the day, and not that it was a Black establishment, but the vibe was super like neo soul, and Eddie Irie would be in there, and there was Funk Jazz Cafe, and there was the Black Arts Festival was really different. I mean, it was a gathering spot, a nexus, a hub for Black intellectual thought, and it seemed like there was a real interplay between those players and the movers and shakers of the city. There wasn't really, yeah, it was definitely more Hollywoodish, and that was the Black part of it. And then on the other side, I was like, what are all these, like, the built environment was different. And it just seemed like the folks who were driving the conversation around what the future of Atlanta was going to look like didn't look like me or anybody I knew. And that was scary, except for obviously politicians, but they also didn't seem to represent that sort of progressive Black voice that I feel like, at least my perception of it as a child, was that the leadership in the city were in conversation with sort of artists and academics, and that was missing.
Yeah.
So what we did was, Clint and I missed that. I mean, there was definitely something in DC. You go to talks, you learn, like there's a sense that you're constantly learning. And it was fun. And so we created Lift Art Salon. Me, Clint, we created a salon to kind of fill that void, and invite artists, academics, young professionals to really congregate together and hopefully cross-pollinate and have some ideas and influence each other's trajectories. That was my impetus for it. And it felt like there wasn't a lot of investment going on. We used to say it a lot. There wasn't a lot of investment in the social infrastructure of the city. We were building buildings, we were throwing up murals, of whatever, but it didn't feel representative.
Yeah. And I also feel like, we talked about how it didn't feel like cohesive either. It felt like we knew that there are these, there's a large creative population in Atlanta. Artists, musicians, whatever. And it felt like there was just this disconnect. I remember you talked about how when you and Clint would go to, an art show or an art gallery, and you'd be looking around like, why are we the only young Black folks in the whole place?
Right.
Like, I know that Atlanta is full of young, professionals, young Black professionals in particular, and they're not in these spaces, and I don't understand why.
Yep, exactly.
So what did you find? What happened as a result of starting Lift Art Salon? How did that kind of fill that void?
Well, I think it whet folks' appetite, so to speak. So I think that while we don't still do it, I think that people are starting to do more things like that. At least I hope so. Seemed like also a lot of the emerging artists were getting, at least the white emerging artists had spaces to show in Atlanta. And that was another thing we were trying to address. It didn't seem like young Black artists had, nobody was joining them in the galleries. Nobody was creating fellowships for them. And so I'm really proud that some of the artists that we started with are now like on the national scene, are getting paid, are full-time artists. And they have, when we first started working with them, and Shady was their mentor, they could hardly say their name in public. So it was,
and it's been
artists, but I'm just so proud of them when I see them.
Right. And I think what was also awesome about Lyft, and just, a little backstory about how the two of us, really established.
St. Beauty blew up, and we were their first show.
Yes. St. Beauty, Gerald Lavelle, Jarrell Cayetano, as we called them, the Geralds.
Yep.
But what was awesome about it, and I think like what people could feel there is like, you guys were just doing it because I remember you said, this always stuck out to me, like, y'all wanted to make events that you would want to go to.
Yeah.
Like, this is the kind of event that you would like to go to, that you would like to see. And so it was that attitude of like, if this is what you want to see, then let's just do it ourselves. There was no money involved. There was no like sponsorship. It was like, here's the
We had
idea.
some tea. We would make some orange tea and some Costco cookies, and that was it. And it was
Yeah.
great.
So, and talk about, a lot of what, and I think this is kind of foreshadowing for your business now, is that part of what Lyft was able to do was to create programming in a space where it started, in spaces that were that had some historic relevance and what
Yep.
had some significance that a lot of people drive by, walk by, stumble down the street drunk by. And have no clue that it's there. So,
Yeah.
so why was that important? And why do you think that was important? An important element of the programming that Lyft provided.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up because, are you there? Okay.
Yeah, here. What you talking about?
So yeah, we started, and we really wanted to highlight historically Black spaces, and we started at the Atlanta Baha'i Center on Edgewood Avenue, which is where my parents met in the late 70s.
Oh,
Yeah,
did I know that? I knew that. I knew that.
you knew that. Yeah. So they met there, and of course, Edgewood was sort of the site of this overhaul that was going on in Atlanta, where you didn't know where you were. It was just bars, and you weren't there in the daytime, or most people weren't. There was nothing to do that was open in the daytime. It's still really not. And we wanted to highlight places and give people a reason to go to these historic places, and sort of help the venues. We also did the Hammond's House, which at the time didn't have as much programming as they have now, that was catered toward young professionals. And so we really used it as an opportunity to sort of enliven the places, attract new audiences while highlighting the historic importance. So really putting a more interesting conversation around historic preservation, in my opinion, and finding new uses for buildings, even if it is just for a pop-up art gallery, sort of expanding people's imaginations about what historic preservation can look like. And so that led me into really being interested in community development. I was interested in urban planning and kind of how uses for spaces were determined. And so that doing Lyft got me in the room with a lot of people. I was able to interview people. We were able to bring the Beltline, Fahamu. Who else did we have that was sort of in that line? Folks who were doing tiny houses, just people who were interested in space.
And bicycles. Remember that
the Bike Coalition.
Yeah, the Black Bike Coalition. Is that what it was called?
No, that was We Cycle.
We Cycle.
Which is
but
great.
To me, yeah. So I think what was great about that, and I think what was like maybe the impetus for what came next was like it was this nexus of the arts community, the Atlanta professional community, folks in nonprofit, folks in academia, and it was like this, and that wasn't even. I think that was like the surprise of it is that our second or third event had 150 people out there. We were literally like squeezing people into the Baha'i Center. And having these conversations about social justice, through the lens of artists and through the lens of young people. And so there were, 70-year-old professors from Emory with 17-year-old spoken word artists who were leading, social protests about Ferguson. It was like this, and then us in there, and our parents and our friends, and it was like, we doing something. So I think like that energy was like, that got people's attention.
It did. I think each one of us had our role with Lyft. And for me, I just really enjoyed creating the spaces for those types of interactions to happen. And that's what I'm able to do now more and more is like, I don't need to be on the stage. I don't need to do the talking, but I do think it's really important that that spaces are created for these types of interactions to happen, because you never know what they're going to be the catalyst for.
Right. Yeah. So after you realized that you were able to create the space, you could kind of create that vision. You moved into just professionally. I think you were in that
I was in
place.
grad school. I was in grad school in sociology at Georgia State, interviewing um, folks who were either sex workers, active drug users, homeless folks on the West Side, and doing HIV testing with them. And so I also just needed a place to remind myself that Black folks are really awesome. Our lives are not only a struggle, because I mean this stuff is heavy, and so I wanted to have some happy places for us also. But yeah, so while I was doing that work, I started getting interested in, like I said, community development, and ended up working in the Atlanta Committee for Progress, which for those of you who don't know, I did not know. I mean, interviewing with them and had no idea what they do. But it's essentially the mayor's kitchen cabinet. So it's a sort of a board of all the top CEOs in the city, the university presidents, and the mayor. And they align on different initiatives every year. And it was actually created by Shirley Franklin. It's a really dope concept, and a lot of cities don't have it. So it really created a sort of power balance between Black and white Atlanta. I think it formalized it. Whether or not that's true, I don't know if it's measured or anything like that. But it did formalize the Atlanta way and how we talk about.
What's the Atlanta way? And I think you can talk about this, because I think knowing the history, like being a child of Atlanta, and now you're in those rooms, like, and we've talked about this too. The Atlanta way, which is what we say has always made Atlanta so dope of a place.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Atlanta we're seeing now is definitely the product of this collaboration between Black and white Atlanta, usually for political and business purposes. I mean, that's why. So I'm sure there's a more academic discussion that can be had in the comments. But because I'm looking at who's in the room, so I'm sure you guys have opinions. And this is not to say whether it's right or wrong, but it's definitely this collaboration that's been over time, at least since, well,
Maynard Jackson.
I don't know when it started, but Maynard was definitely a proponent of this collaboration between the business community and then the Black political community as it emerged to get shit done in the city. And so I mean, if you have a Black mayor and then you have that person in conversation all the time with the CEOs, you're really able to get a lot done. Now, the issue is that it's a lot of times behind closed doors. A lot of people don't know what's going on. And so the implications, but the Beltline, for example, came out of that, the funding for the Beltline, the funding for infrastructure bonds, smart cities. Like, it's kind of a place for these ideas to get incubated, and then if they work, they spin off into their own organizations. So while I was there, they were incubating the West Side Future Fund, which is this community development initiative or development. I don't know how they would discuss it now. At the time, it was a way to revitalize the West Side neighborhoods in light of Mercedes-Benz Stadium being created. So, so after studying like critical race theory and like Black feminist thought and social disparities and social health disparities and all this stuff, it was a very interesting juxtaposition of my research with what it's like to actually put these ideas into practice, and how certain people really determine the lives and the outcomes in communities.
Yeah. So what, when you found yourself, in those spaces now, you've through the, independent stuff that you've done, through your coursework at Georgia State, through the connections that you made, you found yourself at a place, or you found yourself at a place like the West Side Future Fund, where you're now, and that's why I talk about in describing, kind of what your path has looked like. You're now in those rooms, you're sitting at the tables, you're going to those meetings, and a lot of people, me included, just everyday Atlantans, native Atlantans who are seeing it change, we don't know what those conversations sound like. Well, who's making all these decisions? All we know is, it's houses getting torn down and rebuilt. It's condos going up everywhere. the Beltline is here all of a sudden. We're, we're going on the Beltline. We don't really know how this came about or what the purpose is. So what did you find? Like, what was the experience like being in those rooms? Who you saw around you? Were there a lot of other Black women, a lot of young professionals there, or were you kind of in a world?
I mean, let's be clear. I wasn't making no decisions about nothing in there.
But you were in the room. You were like this.
Yeah, I was taking my notes. And, you hope that what happens in those settings is that people incorporate community voice. And so similar to what I did for Lyft was try to create a space for that voice to be heard. It's not that I can represent that voice because that's not my experience. I'm not from the West Side. I didn't grow up in English Avenue. I don't know. But I do know that what the profiles of people who they thought lived in those neighborhoods were not the only people there. It's not just, so we're diverse people. We're not a monolithic people. And so my whole thing was, let's make sure that we are consulting with people who do know. Obviously, there weren't a lot of Black women in the room, but now there kind of are. I mean, they're Black women, but not necessarily representative of the neighborhood either. And that's kind of the thing. It's like, it doesn't matter if you're Black or a lot of what's happening in Atlanta is being driven by Black people, right? It's the mayors, it's Invest Atlanta. You look at those boards, there are Black folks on the boards. Mm-hmm. But it's not necessarily representative, again, of who lives there. And so, we created a summit, which is still in effect today. So I've been gone for about 3-4 years, almost 3.5 years at least. And we did a bi-weekly summit so that anybody could come and learn about what's happening in the neighborhood. You have CEOs in the room with whoever walk in from the street. And I'm really proud of the work that I put in for that because it creates the space, again, for people to advocate on behalf of themselves and not do for people, do with people as much as possible. And so learning how to do that and seeing what works and what doesn't work has been really important and foundational to my career, I would say.
So at what point did you decide that, if you've been in creating these summits, you've been in the meetings, you've had the conversations with everyone from the politicians, the policymakers, the executive directors, you've been navigating your way. At what point did you decide that you wanted to kind of now chart your own path and create your own opportunity to impact that space?
Yeah. Just for the fashionista, the summit's called the Transform Westside Summit. And you can register. It's virtual now, obviously, but it's still happening every 2 weeks. And you can find it on the Westside Future Fund website. So I knew that I wanted to change my path for a number of reasons. But after having Zane,
shout out to Zane. Little Zane. Shout out Zane.
Shout out. He's probably awake upstairs, tearing everything up right now. It's not my shift anymore.
Clint, handle that.
Yeah. But yeah, so having a baby, it's like when you leave your baby, you really want to make sure that what you're doing is meaningful to you. And I think some people have that epiphany earlier. I had it then. Great. I had it then. I was like, I don't know exactly what's going on here. I was the spook. I kind of felt like a spook by the door. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't quite know how I'm being used right now. Mm-hmm. They start having you go out because you're the Black person, the Black girl.
Go to the community meeting.
Yeah, it's like, bro, I ain't doing that for you.
You become the connect. You're the plug. You're the plug.
And I think that that's an important role. I think it's an important thing to do. It's just I didn't feel comfortable in that role anymore, I'll say. So I decided to leave. And it took me a minute to figure out what to do. I mean, for 6 months, I was like, I'm gonna be a stay-at-home mom, and like that was so hard and not for me. And so then I started interviewing and like just having informational interviews with some of the same people, all those influential Atlantans that we were talking about, and like trying to find the right job and should I do this and that. And I applied for a number of like pretty high level jobs in the city, whether like in the policy world, and then didn't get them. And I was like, okay, well, and Clint, to his credit, the whole time he was like, you should incorporate ThrdSpace. You should make it a thing, because we had been floating the idea of like what to do some kind of business after Lyft. I still don't think Lyft should be a business, even though we've vacillated a million times about it. But I had incorporated ThrdSpace, and so I ended up just pitching the same people I was having all these interviews with. I was like, I can do community engagement. Like, I like to do that. I can help think about strategies about how to make sure folks are at the table if you're really about it. And so that's kind of how I started.
So talk about ThrdSpace. What I'm gonna do, because this is what I do. I'm gonna pin your website, whether you like it or not. I'm doing it. Don't care.
Okay.
So talk about, and I think when you say ThrdSpace, kind of talk about what your intention was with that name, because I think the name is very, critical to the description of what you're trying to do and what you're trying to create. So give people an idea of ThrdSpace.
Yeah, so with ThrdSpace, what I wanted to do was remove the barriers to community engagement for organizations like a Westside Future Fund, that organizations that want to help communities, that have it in their mission to, provide services to communities. Like, how do we remove y'all's barriers to how you can actually talk to them?
When you say y'all, who do you mean?
The organization. So, for example, the Atlanta History Center is one of my clients, and they're really interested in going out and, creating content that's relevant to people. So I like to come in and say, okay, well, here's some strategy around how to do that. And here's some insights, and I do research also on their behalf. So whether it's surveys, focus groups, providing community insights so that they can make more informed decisions, and hopefully I help them build bridges between their organizations and the communities that they serve.
So what have you learned about Atlanta through your work with ThrdSpace? Like, what, if you're working with institutions like the Atlanta History Center, if you're working with institutions like the Hammons House, places that have been there a long time, what have you learned about those places and kind of their role, and what role they can play now?
I think that everyone is trying to pivot and sort of think about their institutions outside of the walls, especially cultural institutions. They're really trying to get outside of being just a museum, or, they want to appeal to broader audiences, but they're not quite sure how to do that. They might have some, they have bureaucracy, not necessarily Hammond's House, but the Atlanta History Center, the High, all these institutions, they employ so many people that it's hard for them to pivot quickly. And so, and there's just a lot of intimidation around working with community partners and what that needs to look like. And so I've been really fortunate to work with people like Kalinda Lee, who's their VP at the History Center. She's the VP of Historical Interpretation there. And, if somebody who's in the organization has this passion around co-curation, is what I call it, and working with communities to develop the idea from start to finish, and not creating a product and then saying, hey, here it is, come guys and have this, made this for you, That's what happens a lot. And, that don't work.
So what does work? What have you found, like, in your work? And I guess let me back up. Before I say that, I think that a lot of the conversation that has come out of Lyft, that's come out of ThrdSpace, is in this Atlanta that's changing, that's growing, that has people who aren't even from here who
Yeah.
are coming in and deciding or designing what the future of Atlanta, what new Atlanta looks like. That can be frustrating for someone like me or like you who's like, hey, there's Atlanta has the fabric.
Yeah.
Atlanta has the contents, everything it needs to be this bustling
Yeah.
international city. It already is that.
Yeah.
So what have you found that works for kind of merging those two worlds?
I don't know. I don't know what works for that. I try to make sure that they're reaching out to people who share that opinion to be their vendors, for example, or, to provide content, because a lot of these, not necessarily even institutions, but the idea is that Atlanta's history kind of ended at the civil rights movement, and that's all that there is.
Right.
And, like, that's so not it. And
but we got Martin Luther King. That's all we need.
I mean,
Right?
exactly.
I'm
And
being
it's wonderful. But, that's just not my experience of what Atlanta is. And it represents, Black excellence to me is what Atlanta represents. And it's what I would like to continue to see the city investing in, and all the different forms that can look like, not just Black businesses only. I think that's a really key part of it. But I want it to be a place where Black artists can thrive and Black intellectuals can thrive. And we look to Atlanta to provide thought on the situation, on like Black life. And that's the part I feel like is missing most. Is like people don't even think of Atlanta as that anymore. So, I mean, just doing my small part to, I don't know, like that's a hard question.
How does the work that you're doing, and this may be a hard question too, but
That's your
how
job.
does the work, but you're really smart, so you can handle it. How does the work that you're doing with ThrdSpace reflect who you are and your kind of story and your upbringing? How are you able to bring your personal passion and inspiration to your work?
Yeah, no, that's not too hard.
See, I'm nice.
I'm a fifth generation Atlantan on my mom's side.
My what?
A fifth generation Atlantan. My ancestors are buried in a clover leaf on 75 South off of Cleveland Avenue because they had to move a slave cemetery to build the 75 connector in the 60s. On the other side, my dad's the child of like feudal farmers. They were on a tea farm in Iran. So place, sense of place, rootedness, these are very important things to me. And I don't come from the Atlanta that, like a super light skinned Atlanta. That's not been my, you know what I mean? But because there's the upper class of Atlanta, that's not who I am.
Sure.
But, my mom's we're educated, but I want to have a say in what happens in the place that I love. I don't live in Atlanta right now, but it's still, it represents more to me. And so I feel like making spaces for people like me and others to have a voice in what happens is just, it's really important because I know my folks didn't get that voice. And so whatever happened to them. And we just don't have to be that way anymore. That's, yeah.
So what's amazing, what I've always said is amazing about the fact that you started Lyft, that you started ThrdSpace, is that you had to make a decision, right? You had to decide, like, I can either try and fit into what other people need or want me to do, or I can create what it is that I want to do.
Yeah.
And so you did that. But, when you're creating something, when you're, birthing an idea and getting it incorporated, making a website, you're developing a business idea, it's like you just holding on, strapping your seatbelt in, and you're going. Yep. So as you've been building your business building your consulting firm, kind of defining what it is that you do. And ThrdSpace was started, you've been in business 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
right? So what do starting what is a very personal but also important uh, business?
Yeah, I've been thinking about that. I feel like I'm learning so much that it's hard to even. It was a good question because it forced me to look back.
And you're like, I don't know. Next question.
I don't know. I mean, well, I think just it's okay to start without having it all together. You know, that's, and you can figure it out along the way, but starting is the most important part. And I had a lot of people who were really pushing me and helping me start, but um, you know, it's not going to be the perfect business plan before you start, and it's still not. But it's been going fine for 2 years, and so it's like that's great. And plus, the type of work that I wanted to do, you know, there's no full-time job for that. There's no job title for what I'm doing.
Right.
So it's much easier to get work, and even if there was a job for it, it wasn't going to pay what I wanted, and so I can like piece together and do exactly what I want to do. And I deserve to do that too. You know, you don't have to compromise. And so that's one thing I'm learning for sure is like articulating what I want, and not just taking what's given. So
what do you think was absolutely critical though, outside of just starting, you know, and just getting in the car and driving? What things would you say for people? Because there's lots of people who are have an idea that they want to start. What are some critical pieces that you found, even though you're still learning? If I didn't have this, or I hadn't done these things, it never would have started. It never would have been anywhere near successful.
I would say, I mean, my therapist helped me so very much. Because I mean, I think as women, I don't know, maybe not all women, but for me, I was dealing with a lot of feelings of insecurity, or that, you know, I didn't deserve things, or feelings of worthiness. And those show up in your business. You know, it's hard to command respect, to be confident, to not get taken advantage of if you haven't done that kind of internal work. So I mean, it's not like a business plan. I don't think that's critical to start. I think people get stuck there and then, you know, whittle away.
You're on that Excel sheet.
But nobody look at your website, really. I mean, y'all will because it's posted now. But, you know, when you're going afterward, they just check it to make sure you're legit.
Right.
And, you know, I already had connections. So maybe that's another thing, is to use the network that you have. So you're not, at least to start out. So I felt pretty confident because I was working with people that I knew. So yeah.
So how has your business been affected by the times that we're living in now, with you know, a pandemic, with people not going anywhere, doing much anything? How has it been impacted?
My business or my mental health or my
Well, your mental health is critical to your business.
Thankfully, my business, nothing has changed yet. I'm kind of taking a pause because I feel like this pandemic is a time to pause, and I'm like looking at the nap ministry all the time and trying to chill out. And if you should tag that as well, Miriam, because
I just want to tell people, yesterday, was it yesterday? Yesterday, I was like, hey, I called Nasim and I was like, hey, you know, just to talk about tomorrow. And she was like, I'm going to call you back when I'm done with this. And I was like, okay. And I'm thinking that she has work. And then she called finally and was like, what I was waiting to be done with was my nap. I was like, I know that's right. This nap is important.
Yeah, man, because I don't think, I mean, her whole thing is like, this grind culture is not serving us, and it's not serving. So I'm not like immediately rushing to figure out like how to pivot and like, I don't know, should we just have all these community meetings on Zoom? It's like, I don't know. I just don't know. And that's okay. So I'm
Mhm.
just like stacking my little coins, hoping
Mhm.
for the best. Um, I don't know. It's hard to say what to do.
Yeah.
This is
I mean,
unprecedented.
yeah, that's all you can do. What would you say? You know, I have a freestyle on my spirit. It's like right here.
I can't.
But for people who are watching, and I think that people who are watching will be able to identify, number one, that your knowledge and passion for Atlanta is and where you're from is at the forefront of what you do, which is something that is extremely inspiring. And I don't know, I'm always tooting your horn. I'm always going to big up everything that you're doing. We talked about like, identifying your value and knowing that like you are capable and able to chart your own path. But if anybody's watching this, they're going to know that that's a point of inspiration and passion for you. Is this is a city that I love, where I'm from. I value my time here and who it's made me. It's made me who I am today. So when you think about the work that you're doing and kind of the direction that Atlanta is going in, what are you most excited about? And then what are you not excited about in terms of, the future or the direction that Atlanta's going in?
I think that there are some people who are doing some great work, and I think that Atlanta's starting to listen. I think when we first started Lyft, there were campaigns like Choose ATL that were completely not representative of who we thought we were.
Yes, we would be flaming them in our little text. Like,
Yes,
look at this. Look
live
at
it.
them.
And I don't do that as much anymore. I don't feel like stuff is as blatantly, you know,
Just
not black.
unauthentic.
Yeah.
And
My but what I am concerned about is I'm not sure that there's going to be a place for the affordability conversation is really important. I'm not an expert on affordable housing, but I do know that we're going to be pushing more and more people of color to the. You can't be in Atlanta. You can't be in the city limits, right? And they've created. So I'm not sure what Atlanta's going to look like because I'm not sure who's going to live there, and I'm not sure that it's going to be a place I would want to live. Honestly, I mean, I can't go back in the future, right? I mean, in the past. So it's not going to be what I grew up with. So I think that more and more what I'm starting to believe is I have to create the community that I want, similar to what we did with Lyft. And so I'm
yeah.
looking for places where, I can build a community for myself. I'm not looking for something ready-made because I don't think that that's, we have agency, each person does. And so I'm looking for places where I can build with people who I like. Because that's what other people do. They get a bunch of friends and go move to Grant Park together, and they have
Right.
a life.
And we talked about too, like, we went to Westminster and Riverside. I went to Decatur. I had the conversation about
Yeah.
like diversity in Decatur and growing up. Like, I grew up amongst white folks,
Yeah.
my like childhood was great. It was fantastic. Those are my best friends to this day. So I'm not. While gentrification and that's the buzzword. I don't even want to get
Yeah.
into that. While on the surface it looks like this is jacked up.
Yeah.
But I think that there is a way, at least with people in our generation and our age
Yeah.
group, who grew up in this Atlanta, where we went to the Decaturs and the Riversides and the
Well, that's
Canadians.
part of Atlanta. I mean, there were white people in my Atlanta.
Right. They're not like Atlanta is
I
a
might
big.
not be best friends with them, the ones who I grew up with, but I know them and they cool.
Yeah, they're cool and they are, and I think that there are people who respect and appreciate the history of Atlanta and understand that it is what it is.
Yeah.
They're as frustrated with gentrification, or they're as frustrated with systemic racism as we are. So that's the people that you want to build a community with. So you got to see what you're dealing with first. Don't, just like you don't want to paint all black folks with the same stroke. Don't paint all white folks the same strokes, but you gotta watch them a little bit carefully.
And it's not just black and white. You know what I mean?
Yes,
I'm Persian.
yes,
So I that's what I miss most about other cities is that they're actually some, and there are, like, I live in Smyrna now, and I can walk to an African grocery store, and I do sometimes, and I go to Vietnamese places, and I go, like, I gotta go everywhere. I can't just be in a
yes.
black and white place
Right.
because that's not representative of my life.
Mm-hmm. And it doesn't. It's more. You're going to be more helpful. It's more helpful. You'll be more cultured. You'll just be a more well-rounded and I think whole worldly person if you got people who look different from you and aren't just black and white next door
It
to you
just
going.
can't be my issue with it. It can't be intentionally left out.
Right. So of course, as we're bringing this to a close, it is a tradition on this show, the art of storytelling, inspired by look, now you sitting back. So you sitting
My
back and
part here is done.
relaxing. The art of storytelling is inspired by one of probably the most accomplished, famous,
Best.
influential artists, the best
Mm-hmm.
artists out of Atlanta, Outkast. And what did the Outkast do? They rapped.
Yes.
What do I like to do? I like to rap. Um, I have always implored my guests to join me in this freestyle, but as you see my guest today, she has sat back. She is literally sipping her tea in my face. And I told her, I said, I will do this for you because you are my god sister.
Thank you.
Oh, you are my god sister, and I don't do this for everybody, but you, I will do this for. So I am now forced to come up with my own freestyle that's inspired by our conversation today. Okay, so bear with me, people.
I can't wait. You
I'm
are
usually
so
inspired by competition, but I'm just gonna get into it like this. God. Just as the episode coming to a close, I just want y'all to know you got exposed to one of the bosses in the city. You know what it is, and she got real pretty curls in her hair, and you know that they popping. She's doing it big, and it ain't no stopping. She's going all over the place, and she got a new company. The brand is ThrdSpace, doing it big for the community. I'm doing it big because she's this. I'm not cursing on the mic, but I got a story I'm telling tonight. It started way back at Westminster. You know what it is, and I don't know what rhymes with minister, but I'm keep going. God, I'm keeping flowing, and I'm going to say it. And it's snowing. Atlanta is a city she was born and raised. You know what it is? I give you the praise. Doing it big for the black folks and the white folks, and it ain't no smoke, cause I'm not trying to rap no more because I'm about to lose my flow. But I want to say this before I go. There is something that you should know. You are the boss. You running things. You know what it is, and we about to swing. If somebody try to mess with you, girl, I will punch them out this world. I'm about to wrap it up. All I know is that it's going up. I can't think of anything more. So you need to know what you have in store. Zane, Clint, and Nasim Fluker. You know what it is? What rhymes with Fluker? I don't know, but I gotta go. Thank you so much for being on my show.
wow. That was good. That was good. I love you.
What rhymes with Fluker?
Nothing. I don't.
Girl, that was I don't know what just happened. I
This
just
is like
blacked
my
out.
boobie. There's more that rhymes with my boobie than Fluker.
Oh, I should see. Like you said, don't forget the my boobie. I just blacked out. I don't know what just happened, but I do know that this was a blessing. I don't know if you can see, but like the little hearts on the
Uh-huh.
side, can you see them when they're going up?
Yeah, what is that?
That means people are like, that's like, yes, yes. That's what
Oh.
that is. Nasim, this is just, it's always an inspiration when I talk to you. I always feel like, and I need to say this publicly, that part of what has brought me to the place where I'm doing a show like this is the platform that I was able to get by you and Clint inviting me over and saying, we want to start Lift Art Salon and we need you to do it. We want you to do this with us. And just identifying what my strengths are and my talents were, and you guys, bringing those to the forefront and like validating them has been transformative for me. So,
Yay.
you know,
Thank you.
you're
You
welcome.
got a
So,
gift. You got a gift. And we can all get to hear it twice a week, which I am thrilled about.
y'all gonna get tired of me.
Clint knows, leave me alone. I gotta go upstairs, get my tea, and have my show, get my story.
Yes, get your stories. Well, thank you so much. I know that I was like, if Nasim says yes, then I know she really loved me. So thank you so much.
Thanks,
As you guys
everybody.
know, yes, thank you so much for being here. All of you guys, please share this video, share Mina D Entertainment. I've got her website there, ThrdSpace.com. But once things get back up and running, you've heard what she does. You've heard what the mission of her company is, and so just keep the things that you've heard in mind.